what we decided to do is before we get started, we're going to do a little, I went to Merriam-Webster's dictionary just to say, what is value? Right?
You're going to let us know what value
I'm
means.
going to let you know what value is and all the different permeations of it. But, the first is it can be used as a noun. And here's some examples. The monetary worth of something.
Something like maybe...
Like a market price or like the value of Bitcoin.
The value of Bitcoin's a lot more now than it was.
A lot more than it was last year. That's right. Or a relative worth, a utility of importance. Like Harvey had nothing of value to say.
Who cares? Who cares?
Right. It can be used as a verb. So to consider or rate highly. Like Noah values your opinion.
Oh, and some songs. Maybe not all song choices, but mostly, right, Noah?
Or it can also be used as an estimate or a sign of monetary worth. Like you're going to get your jewelry appraised of value before it's insured.
Like gold prices going up, silver prices going up, things like that. Makes sense.
Yeah. Also as an adjective. So it's a very versatile word. And this is used more like an inexpensive brand of products versus a value brand. So consumers choosing between premium brands versus a value brand.
We just had that conversation last night. My family was talking about some fancy soap that they discovered, and my answer was, I like Irish Spring. Thank you. So, I'm a value brand guy.
There you go. So that's a little bit of value here. So enough of that. But who better to talk about adding value to the cannabis industry than someone who trains and teaches people to add value to the cannabis industry?
Yeah, and if you remember back to episode 33, we had Mrs. Mailsack joining us on that episode. We're welcoming back Professor Shad Ewart. He teaches a course titled Entrepreneurial Opportunities in Emerging Markets, Cannabis Legalization. He's a professor at Anne Arundel Community College in Maryland. How are you, Professor? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great, Max and Stephen. It's good to see you guys. I'm a little worried here with this whole Zoom thing. I've been told I have a face made for radio here, so hope we don't scare anybody away and stuff.
Well, it's a shame they got you holding that phone up to your ear. I guess
the way it works, man.
But you sound great and you look great.
I love that Sam Cooke there. And by the way, that was my our wedding song. My wife and I.
Nice. Congratulations. We knew that. We channeled that information.
That was your first dance?
Yes,
or whatever that is.
Yep.
Well, that's beautifal.
Very nice.
Way to go,
See,
Max.
We didn't know. Yeah.
Way to go.
Sometimes you win.
Well, squirrel gets a nut every once in a while.
I'm like that squirrel sometimes.
That's great. Well, we have a lot to cover. We got a lot of great questions for you. I've been thinking about this all week, and we want to really get a chance to expose what you're doing over there at Anne Arundel with your program. And I know in your course you start students out with an analysis of the history of cannabis, because if you want to know where you're going, it makes sense to know where you've been. What are some of the notable highlights they uncover, and what are their reactions to it?
Well, thanks for the question. It's a great question there. And listen, we all need a rear-view mirror in our lives and stuff like that. There's some interesting, little factoids in there. The fact that the Greeks in 200 BC used the fan leaves and put them as veterinary medicine, and they actually put them on the flanks of their horses after long rides. Queen Victoria in the 19th century, she suffered from horrible PMS, and it provided her tremendous relief. So those are just some itty-bitty facts. I would say the two most interesting things where I get the most reaction is number one, cannabis has been used as a medicine for 5,000 years, and that absolutely stuns students. And we thank the Chinese because they write things down, and we know starting in 2737 they were using it for gout, for rheumatism, for actually using it for absent-mindedness as well. So that fact that it has basically wherever the plant was found, and those are called the land race strains, the strains that were around before the humans were around. Wherever the plant was found, the people used it for medicine. There was no psychotropic effect. There was no, intoxication or anything like that they were, finding in terms of the use of the plant. But they were using it as medicine. The second thing that the students react to is that you have this 5,000 years of medicine, and again, not even kind of interesting medicine. It would have appeared in your apothecary, and it would have been next to the lavender or the mint or something like that. It wouldn't have been behind the counter. You would have kept the laudanum back there. But the other thing that they find very interesting is that about 120 years ago, this plant was consciously demonized. for a couple of reasons. One, as we know from Watergate, follow the money. Money is always one of the things that motivates us, but also out of racial prejudice. A guy named Harry Anslinger was basically the DEA of the early part of the 20th century, and he just did not like the fact that he found out that Mexicans were migrating over the border and bringing recreational use with them, and that just absolutely offended him. He had some rich buddies. He had a friend in William Randolph Hearst who ran 500 newspapers in the United States, and if you get a friend that runs 500 newspapers to write an article that didn't have to be true, basically two types of articles, people of color were either raping white women or killing white men. And you just run that article in all of your papers, and all of a sudden, by 1936, we have reefer madness. So I think those two facts, one, that it's been medicine for so long, and the fact that it was demonized so effectively in the last 100 or so years.
I want to get back to, some of your students, and a lot of the topics that we cover here is the endocannabinoid system, and I know that's a big part of your course as well. So I know that you have them write a paper on how plant compounds interact with the human body. Where do they get those real answers? I can't imagine that Google's helpful for that.
And Max, we're not taking that deep of a dive. This is not a medical class here and stuff. But this is where I rely on my guest speakers. Listen, 5 years ago, when I started this class, I had some incredibly basic questions. I would not have known what CBD was when I started this class. I did not know what some of the concentrates were. I literally, the second week, had to take a young man out afterwards, and I said to him, we were walking around campus, I said, listen, you keep mentioning this stuff called shatter and butter and wax. I have no idea what this is. Please help me not appear to be an idiot here. Listen, there is some decent information out there on the internet. Right now, the cannabis industry, the CBD industry, I think, people are trying to be helpful, so there is some fairly decent information to get yourself started. But this is, where I rely on my guest speakers, and one of my fabulous ones is the medical director over at Forward Grow, which is the grow facility in Anne Arundel County. Her name is Dr. Deborah Kimlis. She studied in Israel with Dr. Meshulam, the guy that isolated THC and identified it. So the fact that I have access to these people and they can come into the class is so helpful for me. And I literally gear the assignments after their appearances, So that's been a tremendous help for me. And again, I think at this point in time in the industry, folks are being helpful. We haven't gotten to the cutthroat competitive level yet, but don't worry, we'll get there. It's business.
Well, thanks for that that nice little outlook there. We have a lot more to get to. What we're going to do is take a quick break right now. We'll be back with more of Shad Ewart and some more questions about opportunities in the cannabis industry. So don't go anywhere. That's right, everybody. We will get by with another episode of Understanding CBD. We're welcoming back Shad Ewart from Anne Arundel Community College, Professor Shad, that is. Hey, Max Sobel, how are you over there?
Welcome back, Stephen Wallman.
Thank you very much. We got a lot to cover today, and I wanted to ask you back to catch up on when the students are talking about doing the research on the endocannabinoid system. You also have them interview medical patients, and I'm curious: do the students find the patients are eager to be interviewed and tell their stories?
That depends. That depends on if somebody does have kind of a previous experience with cannabis. Listen, the reason why I do this is that the students who take my class, probably half of them are looking for a job in the industry. And so more than likely that entry-level job for most of them is going to be in a dispensary. And one of your jobs in a dispensary is to talk to the customer and to recommend, the various types of products that you have. See, in the cannabis world, the doctor plays a different role than in the, let's say, the prescription medicine world. If you get a prescription medicine, the doctor is going to tell you how much to take, how many doses, and stuff like that. In the cannabis world, the doctor is simply saying that you qualify to go to a dispensary. You either have a disease or you have one of the conditions. Maryland has about 5 or 6 conditions. They only have a couple of diseases. So the doctor just says, okay, you are qualified to go. Therefore, the critical conversation is going to occur at the dispensary, all right? As opposed to when you go to the pharmacy, most of the time you simply hand them the script and they hand you what the doctor has recommended that you
Yeah, and
take.
that's a huge difference between how traditional medication is prescribed by physicians and doctors than this, right? This is completely,
Absolutely.
they're just saying you qualify and then you're on your own, like, because they don't necessarily know what the right one is, or do you see that, how does that working?
Well, listen, one of the problems is that the endocannabinoid system is only taught in about 19% of our medical schools. So you have 81% basically of our doctors out there that aren't really even qualified to make that type of a recommendation there.
Yeah.
So it does put a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility on those people working at the dispensary. And that's one of the things that I am absolutely, pushing with my students. Do not overpromise anything. A lot of times, when we're in the room or we're, conducting class, we all feel the same way. They're all pro-cannabis. They're all nodding. They all get it and stuff like that. A lot of times your client or your customer is going to be somebody that's going to be slightly reticent about it. So don't, my great fear is that somebody's got cancer, and I got a student out there telling them, oh, give up your chemo and just smoke this strain and you'll be okay. No. So absolutely, this is a critical point of interaction between the cannabis dispensary and the patient there, and that's why an ongoing relationship is also critical. That that they'd be willing to get back to the employee and say, hey, listen, this did work or it didn't work, and what else can we try? So to me, that's so critical. So that's why I build that into the assignment. Now you asked me about, are people reticent? Are they willing to share and stuff like that? And again, that depends on the people. And I think a lot of my students, they self-select individuals that they know are going to be fairly open about that. But no, that's their kind of first step for me, at least, to get them used to talking to individuals and determining what their condition is and is there a cannabis solution for them.
And so a lot of the people, and we know because we've experienced some of these people, there's a stigma related. There's certainly controversy still related to cannabis and the use and sale of it. In your experience, what are some of the most common controversies?
Well, listen, I think the controversies out there are kind of on the macro level. I will tell you one of the things that that does make potential patients nervous is a lack of information. So I love the fact that you guys have certificates of analysis that you're willing to provide, and that you have done the research into dosage and stuff like that. And listen, I believe that information is the cure for everything.
So education. So you approve of our radio show as well, huh?
There you go. In terms of big controversies out there still, I think there's a couple of them, and I think there's one of them is still acceptance. Is getting, so like I said, I'm worried about my students overpromising. The other end that I'm worried about are the people that could benefit from either CBD or cannabis that are just afraid to try it. And the best example I have is my father. My father has chronic back problems. My sister and I tried for 5 years to get him to try CBD or medical cannabis, and he comes from the just say no generation. Oh, it's a gateway drug, and all of the old things that we now know are not true. And it wasn't until he went to a dispensary. My sister lives out in Nevada. She got him to go to a dispensary, a medical dispensary. He was in a small room. There was a woman with a clipboard. She had on a white jacket, and she had a stethoscope. My sister and I now believe the stethoscope was probably a prop, but you know what? That mattered to my dad. Mm-hmm. That mattered to my dad. And he likes to say now, listen, I didn't need a Bic lighter, and I never saw anything green. It was a transdermal patch that he was recommended, and it worked great. He got on a plane. He flew back from Nevada all the way to Tennessee, which was almost impossible for him to do. Driving with him is a total pain in the butt. Every hour he has to stop and walk around for 15 minutes. Good for the dog, not good for you if you're trying to make time here. So he gets back to Memphis. I call him up, so I'm panicking about, did he freak out on the plane? I'm watching CNN to see, oh, my God, plane puts down in Denver because elderly man has cannabis reaction or something like that. And the first words out of his mouth were, geez, this stuff was great. Can you bring me some? And I'm like, Pops, I'm not muling drugs across the country, and I'm sorry you live one of the states that currently isn't legal there.
He thinks you have the hookup because you teach the course. That's what it is.
Well, there you go, but I'm not going there. My mom and dad might have raised some ugly children, but they didn't raise a bunch of dumb kids. So I'm going to take the fifth on that one, Max. But no, but the point is that how we present this to folks is so critical. It's so critical. And so, again, facts. Don't denigrate people. That, like I said, it's not a gateway drug. We use facts to explain these things. You said that, what other controversies are out there, and I think one of the big ones also out there in this industry is this methodology in which the cannabis industry is licensing people. I like to say islands of legality and a sea of illegality, but it's in each of these islands of legality being each state. Each one of them is also their own little economic experiment that is going on here. And we have gone through this process of licensing, that you have to apply for a license, that you just can't simply open up a dispensary. I have a great business plan. I've got enough money. You can't do that in any state right now. So you have to go through this licensing process. And no matter how many times they have tweaked this process, it seems to end up the same way, that rich white people end up with these licenses in an industry that has had a history of racism, where people of color have been damaged by this industry, by the criminal justice system and how it is related to this industry. And even with their attempts to try to make it better, they seem to keep failing again and again. Illinois, a year and a half ago, we all said, oh, that's it. They've got the social equity thing down. That's a great method. They're in lawsuits, and they still haven't distributed the licenses yet. So to me, those are the big things. We still need to work on acceptance, and this methodology we have of licensing these things, I'm not sure if that's the way to go. I don't know what the other answer is for that, but to me, those are big controversies right now.
Yeah, it's hard to see the path forward to the way it was before the demonization of the plant, because at the end of the day, it's a plant, right? And for thousands of years, humans have used it. We haven't even discussed the non-medical value of it, whether it's nutrition, building supplies, getting rid of the petrochemicals that are used in this planet, toxic remediation of land, and all these other things. I mean, it's 20-some hundred functions of this plant that it can be used for. It seems like this path of licensing is not the right way to move forward, and I think what you're saying here is it is kind of repeating the same pattern. It's not really something that's going to build any equity in this port.
And probably not adding value, to the point of our show today, right?
It's not going to be adding value, but I'll tell you what will have value. We've just had our biggest state, New York, legalize, all right? Just think about that dispensary, and like in all other states, they're going to limit the number of dispensaries. It's going to be geographic. It's going to be based on population. But there is going to be one dispensary in Times Square.
Oh, yeah.
That is going to be the crown jewel.
Right.
And I can guarantee you that is not going to go to some young entrepreneur in Manhattan who's got the best business plan. It's going to go to the person with the biggest pile of money. And, that is still the issue. And listen, we're dealing with something that has value. And when you make it rare, like through this licensing process, that's going to drive that value up and drive some people out of this industry.
Yeah, get the money.
One
of the other things. So you got a very encompassing course, and it's it's not a whole 18-month program. This is one course. Now, when people go through these steps, and you're taking them through the process of learning, what's the final exam like? Do they what do they do for that?
Listen, that final exam, this whole course is based on demand. All right? I had students in 2013, 2014. They were watching that show, High Profits, on CNN, the two dumbest people on the planet that fell into a license out in Breckenridge, Colorado. Students were interested in, and that's why I started the course. Listen, my background is business. My background is not medicine. So I was looking at it from the business standpoint. I saw it as, hey, look, these are the things that are going to happen here. Students are interested in it. I'm in the dream business. They have dreams. I want to get to that point. I have altered the course to meet the needs of the students. And so there's basically two types of students that end up in my course. Those that are looking for a job in the industry, all right, and again, most of them end up entry-level jobs in a dispensary. Some of them are in some of the grow facilities. We still haven't figured out the robot that can take a little tiny plant and put it in a slightly bigger pot, and then when that plant gets a little bigger, to get it into an even bigger pot. That has to be done by a human being. So they either want a job in the industry or they want to start a business. So the final exam, they get a choice. I believe in choice, and I believe in giving students choice. Now, whether they have to do the final or not, that's not a choice. I like to tell the students, this is not a democracy in here. This is a tyranny, but I'm a fairly benevolent tyrant, all right? So we're not going to debate certain things like assignments and things like that. But in this case, I give them a choice. So for those that want to look into starting a business, they can do a mini business plan for me. For those that are looking to get a job in the industry, I have them do a resume and a cover letter, and then we do a mock interview with them. I try to bring in folks from various dispensaries and hiring managers and stuff, and I let them do that oral part of the final exam for those folks that are looking to get a job in the industry. And what's been great is I've probably got 25 students working in the industry right now, and there are many times that during the final exam someone will take somebody aside and say, hey, this is back when we were face-to-face. Let's continue this conversation. I think there's a place for you at my place.
Do the students then reach out to you after they've launched their business to keep you updated with their successes or failures or challenges or anything like that?
Yeah, listen, Max, this is one of the great things about this. I mean, there's been many wonderful things for me as a professor, all right? And number one, you got to understand, there are classes that you have to take and classes that you want to take. And there are a lot of classes that you have to take. Yeah. I also teach accounting. I have marketing majors tell me all the time, I'm a marketing major. Why do I have to take accounting? You'll make better marketing decisions and stuff like that. So, number one, I have a class full of people that want to be there. Nobody has ever said, I took your class because it was on Tuesday night and I needed a business elective. Nobody has ever said that. They simply want to be there. So it has been a tremendous... I maintain this network. I have maintained this network of ex-students and stuff. So even the ones that go back 5 years now, and one of those students was a woman named Laura Toskoff. And she is the outlier in my class because she and her husband, Tony Toskoff, are the owners of Greenpoint Wellness up in Linthicum and their new facility they have in Laurel. Tony comes in and grades the students. Laura comes in and talks to the students and stuff like that. So I have developed this great network. We all stay in touch with each other. I do have these cannabis networking events at my home. Once the pandemic is over with, we're going to start these up again. I do live in the District of Columbia, so I invite people in, and it's just amazing to have students from 2 years ago find a student from a year ago, and I've got half an idea, you've got half an idea. Let's put this together and make it work.
It seems like you got a great ecosystem built there, Shad. We got to run and bounce, but I wanted to make sure people know how to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to reach out?
Probably at the college, sbewart@aacc.edu is my email. And they can always reach me on Twitter, and I'm at Shad from DC, and that's a great way to reach out to me. And anybody that, Mackie Barch over at Culta Supply, I had him in once as a guest speaker, and he said an amazing thing to me. He says, listen, you're in CBD, you're in cannabis, you've become an ambassador for this industry.